Ever wondered what connects, say, the apple you buy at the market to a massive global financial crisis? It might seem like they're worlds apart, but they're both governed by the exact same fundamental rules, the building blocks of our entire economy. Today, we're going to uncover those hidden patterns and see how they really shape our world. All right, here's the game plan. We'll start small, looking at the intense competition between businesses. Then we're going to zoom out and see how those battles shape the markets we deal with every single day. From there, we'll get a bird's-eye view of the economy's big ups and downs. And finally, we'll meet a couple of masterminds whose clashing ideas pretty much defined our economic debates, even today. So let's kick things off with the absolute basics, market structure. The best way to think about it is like a playing field. The shape of that field, whether it's a huge open stadium or a tiny little arena, sets all the rules for every buyer and seller in the game. Now, competition isn't just an on or off switch, right? It's really a spectrum. This visual here kind of lays it all out. On one end, you've got pure, perfect competition. And on the total opposite end, you've got a complete monopoly. Just about every market you can think of lives somewhere in between these two extremes. Let's start with the textbook ideal. Perfect competition. Just imagine a farmer's market, but one where hundreds of farmers are all selling the exact same kind of apple. No single farmer can decide to charge more. Why? Because you just walk over to their neighbor and buy it for cheaper. In this world, the market sets the price, and everybody just has to roll with it. So, what are the magic ingredients for this so-called perfect world? Well, first, you need tons of buyers and sellers, so no one person has any real power. Second, the product is homogeneous. That's just a fancy word meaning it's all identical. One farmer's apple is the same as any other. Third, there's free entry and exit, so anyone can decide to start selling apples or stop whenever they want. And finally, everyone knows what the going price is. You put all that together and it ensures that the power lies with the market as a whole, not with any individual seller. Okay, now let's do a complete 180 and look at the other extreme, the monopoly. This is the polar opposite. One seller, and only one seller, controls the entire market for something that has no good alternatives. A classic example? Your local electric company. If you want power, you don't really have another choice, do you? And the source of a monopoly's power is pretty straightforward. There are just no other options. Big barriers, whether they're legal ones or just financial, block any potential competitors from even trying to enter the market. And this is huge because it transforms the seller from a price taker into a price maker. They get to set the terms. They can even do something called price discrimination, which is charging different people different prices for the exact same thing. So here's the bottom line. It all comes down to this contrast. Perfect competition is a world with lots of powerless price takers and wide open doors. A monopoly? That's a world with one all-powerful price maker, and the doors are locked and bolted shut. These are the two poles of our economic map. But let's be real. The world is rarely that black and white. Most businesses we know and use operate in what you could call the messy middle, somewhere between those two extremes. So let's dive into the markets we actually live in. First up, we have monopolistic competition. Now, that sounds way more complicated than it is. Just think about toothpaste. You've got dozens of brands, Colgate, Crest, Sensodyne, you name it. They all clean your teeth, sure, but they're not identical, are they? They compete on branding, flavor, whitening power. So this is a market with lots of sellers, but each one has its own tiny little monopoly on its specific version of the product. Okay, so what happens when there are just a few really big players in the game? Well, that's what we call an oligopoly. Think about the car industry, or airlines, or even your cell phone provider. A handful of massive companies basically dominate the entire market. They might sell slightly different things, but the main feature is that there's only a few of them calling the shots. And this leads to the single most important thing you need to know about an oligopoly: interdependence. It's like a high-stakes chess match. If Ford decides to offer a huge discount, you can bet that Toyota and Honda have to react. Every single move a company makes is done with a careful eye on what its few competitors are going to do next. And when that high-stakes chess match only has two players, that's when you get a duopoly. The whole market is pretty much carved up between just two dominant firms. All that strategic thinking we just talked about gets amplified into this intense head-to-head rivalry. And I mean, come on, is there a better example than this? The entire global soft drink market has been defined for decades by the nonstop battle between these two giants. Every ad campaign, every new flavor, every price change is a direct shot fired in their ongoing corporate war. Okay, so we've seen how the game is played in individual markets. Now, let's pull the camera way, way back and look at the entire economy, because it has a rhythm, a pulse, all its own.
This is a question that's as old as economics itself. I mean, why can't we just have nice, steady growth forever? Why are there good times and bad times? The answer lies in something called the business cycle.
This chart right here shows the natural ebb and flow of economic activity. It's not a straight line pointing up. It's more like a wave. The economy grows, it hits a peak, it shrinks for a bit, bottoms out, and then it starts growing all over again. And believe it or not, this isn't seen as a failure. It's actually considered a normal feature of a market economy.
So let's break this wave down. The upswing is the expansion, or the boom. That's when things are great, jobs are easy to find, businesses are growing. Then comes the downswing, the contraction, which we call a recession. If it gets really, really bad and lasts a while, we hit the lowest point, the trough, or depression. And finally, things start picking up again in the recovery phase, which, you guessed it, leads right back into the next expansion. The cycle just keeps on going.
So we have these different market structures and these big economic cycles. For centuries, brilliant minds have been trying to make sense of all these forces. Let's wrap up by looking at two of the most influential thinkers whose ideas are still clashing today. First up, you've got Adam Smith and his famous idea of the invisible hand. Smith basically argued that when everyone just acts in their own self-interest, the baker sells bread to make money, not because he's a super generous guy, an unseen force guides the market to produce exactly what society needs in the right amounts. And in the end, everybody benefits. But then, about 150 years later, right in the middle of the Great Depression, a guy named John Maynard Keynes came along with a big challenge. He introduced the paradox of thrift. His point was that, yeah, saving money is a smart move for you as an individual. But if everybody starts saving their money during a recession, then nobody is spending. And if nobody's spending, businesses fail, people lose their jobs, and the whole economy gets even worse. Because one person's spending is always another person's income. So right here, we have these two towering figures with totally opposing views. In one corner, you've got Adam Smith, the champion of laissez-faire, which literally means let it be, a hands-off approach. And in the other corner, you have John Maynard Keynes, who argued that governments have a duty to actively jump in, using spending and tax policies to steer the economy away from disaster during those down cycles. And that leaves us with the million-dollar question that economists and politicians are still fighting over today. In our incredibly complex, interconnected world, should we just trust in that self-correcting invisible hand that Adam Smith talked about? Or do the wild swings of the business cycle prove that we need a more visible, active hand from the government, like Keynes argued, just to keep the whole ship steady? The true answer is probably somewhere in the middle, and that debate continues to define our economic world.